Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. Apologies for the late delay. This old man isn't able to wake with uh, gusto, alacrity, enthusiasms, because, ooh, man, I've been doing some late evenings, and it's my age is really showing. So I apologize for that. Um, mm-mm-mm. Drew. No. We're not spoiling House of Dragon. So, what are we going to talk about today? And let's talk about 5 things we can steal from House of the Dragon. Now, I am not going into this second season, but I've been enthusiastic about the very first episode so far released for House of the Dragon, and we are definitely the quality level has not dropped. For those that are hesitant to get back into the world of Game of Thrones, please binge the first season and get into the second season. It is very well written. It is a There's no relationship between the showrunners from the last 2 seasons of Game of Thrones, season 7 and season 8, and House of the Dragon. No relationship whatsoever. Same titles, different people. I know our feelings were hurt, whatever the case may be. We're getting in House of the Dragon, and mind you, this what I'm going to talk about with House of the Dragon really applies to probably the vast majority of Game of Thrones and other things, and why people are so bullish about it. And yes, I get it. Some people are like anti Germ George R. R. Martin simply because so many other people are hype about it. But quality is quality. And mind you, sure, can George R. R. Martin be accused of being a little bit shall we say heavy-handed in the decadence level? Yes. You could. I'm not going to argue with that point if that really bothers you, and that it seems like there's a term called no good deed goes unpunished that I feel like I've suffered from some of those things, where the good characters, the ones who are honest, loyal, dutiful, truthful, seem to suffer the most in Game of Thrones, and that seems to be the rules of the world. So, um, let's talk about some at least 5 things we can steal from House of the Dragon. And when I say House of the Dragon, I mean the entire series of everything that's been televised, and what we can use for that for our creative purposes, especially tabletop role playing games. So the first one is that, and this should be real easy. This goes into your toolbox. The first one are um, NPCs who are fully realized. Now, I don't mean side characters and NPCs and other characters that are in this show have we get to understand their full histories and their backgrounds. No. That's not what I mean. What I mean is, uh, damn near most of the NPCs and I'm calling them NPCs, side characters in the show are our NPCs, and we're building them like icebergs. So when unnamed characters or simply named characters arrive on the scene, we're given very extremely short amount of time to understand what these characters want, what they need, how they move throughout this world, what their motivations are, their fears, and we're given 10 seconds to figure out what this character is about. And the iceberg of these characters, and when I say iceberg, and I hopefully you guys understand what this means, because we there are whole channels dedicated to iceberging conspiracies and theories and knowledge and things like that. And what it means is, an iceberg, when you see a giant sized iceberg, you're only seeing like 10% of it because the rest of it is underwater. and we're giving the illusion, we're giving we're given information that there's something deeper going on. So one of the very first things we can steal from House of the Dragon are, even if you collect all the characters in the show that seemingly on the surface are all aligned together, they all have their own purposes, their own desires, and whether that means um, whether they are greedy and they just want some money, they want safety, prestige, some of the darker traits, right? They have jealousies, they are seeking status. Pick one of those and apply it to your most recent NPC, and give them varying circles, grades, um, domes of influence. So a very small-minded, very simple, very local character, their circle of influence is very small. So if they're power hungry, really maybe all they want is to eliminate the competition at the local fair or bazaar, right? Whereas if you get a noble, their sphere of influence is huge and they want to eliminate all the rival houses. So despite the fact that both characters might be power hungry or jealous or greedy, a greedy NPC that's very minor might just want a sack of coins and throw it in their pocket, whereas a noble might want um, you know, trade influence over the narrow sea or something like that. So basically, create NPCs that seemingly they have a desire, they have a want, they probably have a need, and that need may conflict with their wants. Many of us want money and prestige and safety and to be beautiful and that kind of thing. But really, what we need is self actualization and maybe a better paying job or family members that respect us or what have you. So wants and needs, and then what the hell's in stopping them from getting it. And when the player characters come in, player characters, of course, are our proverbial monkey wrench. They're the ones that come in and disrupt everything that's related to it. Lastly, I would say have NPCs that are um, in media res, in the middle of their life. They are going about their business, and that business doesn't necessarily need to be big or grand or arcane, but NPCs that are in the middle of their lives. Maybe they're taking care of a sick relative, or they owe a debt because they have gambling debts and they owe this debt. Maybe one of them is just coming down with an illness like a common cold, or one of them is in the midst of rebuilding a collapsed roof in their small hovel or something. Um, have NPCs have other things going on in their life. Don't just have them spouting out uh, random quest giving information like in a video game where every time the player turns the corner, the NPC is literally waiting there. Excuse me, to spout out useless information. Ooh, excuse me. All right. Number two that we can steal from House of the Dragon and largely Game of Thrones. I think the second thing that we can take from this is that um, following the rules of the world is the best practice when we are in doubt as to the themes and tone that we're trying to bring across to our game. And sometimes, strangely enough, embracing tropes, falling into the trope, is the best way to get across what our world is like in our fantasy gaming and even in our modern and science fiction tabletop role playing experiences. Because when we fall into the tropes, the moment we disrupt expectation, um, it becomes that much more exciting and more mysterious. So what do I mean by that? In House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones, we see a lot of parallels. As a matter of fact, because this is happening almost 200 years in the not future, in the past, before Game of Thrones. This is during the age of the Dance of Dragons. This is where we have a lot more dragons, a lot more Targaryens, et cetera, et cetera. And those things have passed away, disappeared from knowledge and history as we advance into the 8 seasons of Game of Thrones. And what we have are characters who are parallels of each other. It's almost like a cyclical, there is a built in cyclical storytelling that's happening on purpose, where we have the kingmaker that speaks lies and deceptions into the ear of the nobles. We have ourselves a are characters that are more aggressive, and they want to bring people to the sword, and that's all they do. They walk around and just to solve all their problems, they're just like, shouldn't we just kill them and pull another sword or whatever? And you always have to have another character that's like, you need to relax, you need to wait. We have the hand of the king that always seems to be speaking into the king or noble's ear, about how to handle things. We have the nobles, and the hand of the king seems to be really running the place. There's a lot of parallels. We have characters that are literal stand-ins for characters we've already seen in Game of Thrones. And while that seems like it's lazy, which it could be viewed that way, it's like, why don't you just write? Why do we have Varys and Laris? their character names are like literal parallels of each other, and they both speak into the nobles' ears, and they all have um, a hidden network of gossip mongers that come back to them, and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, yeah, but the tropes work. And so, having the noble knight that's a little naive, while yeah, a little tropish, embracing those tropes, when it happens to the second, third, fourth, fifth time in your game, the players are like, oh, okay, here we go. Here's this other character that's doing this thing. And then you get the opportunity to disrupt the trope. And when you disrupt the trope, it can really throw your players for a loop because they're expecting the exact same thing yet again. Much like changing the recipe on a meal that's very common, or someone who is known to wear a particular clothing style. I remember uh, when before I started working for the post office, I worked for the Treasury Department, federal government, and there was a guy who always wore jeans. Ooh, that's bright. Jeans, and he wore Chuck Taylors and a T-shirt, and his sneakers always matched his shirt. If his chucks were checkered, black and white checkered, his shirt was checkered. If his shoes were yellow, he wore a yellow t-shirt. If he wore red sneakers, he wore a red t-shirt. And this was extremely consistent. And we remember one time this guy shows up in like a polo shirt. It was like some kind of pastel color. He had like dress shoes on and slacks or something. And then we all looked at him. Now, mind you, he wasn't dressed outrageously or anything, but for that character in our lives, this real human being, we were just like, you're not the same character. What's going on? And then it was like a lot of questions and stuff. And he's looking around like, guys, relax. I wore shoes, and they're like, yeah, but you wear a blue shirt, you wear blue sneaks, you wear a green shirt, you wear green sneaks. And he's like, nah, I just thought I needed a change. But to us, it disrupted our lives more than that individual who just one day woke up and went, nah, I don't really feel like it. Right? It wasn't a big deal, but we thought it was a big deal. And so with NPCs and using tropes, sometimes when you overly use a trope, once you start to disrupt it, the players, it becomes that much more um, exciting to see a thing that disrupts what's happening in your world. Okay, so number three, I think number three is that when characters, especially influential characters, all player characters and influential NPCs do a thing, everybody, the world itself has an opinion. Don't 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 get it twisted. The fact of the matter is when powerful and influential people do a thing, that everybody has an opinion about it, for good or bad, whether they even want to do something about it. Um, Allow the influence, especially of the players, affect the world, and even especially with NPCs that don't recognize the faces of the players, but talk about the players behind their backs. Let that stuff happen all the time. Let the players have an influence on your world, especially when it comes to gossip and songs and plays and monuments and fashion and politics, and let people just let them make assumptions, let the NPCs make wrong, um have incorrect information spread throughout your world about your player characters. I mean, have children run down the street dressed as your player characters, pretending to have these battles that they are in. Hey, Hussein, Fiaz Hussein, hello, hello. Thank you very much for joining us here. Just talking about it. I was very influenced and happy for House of the Dragon to return to television, and it just sparked some mental fuel in my head, and I thought I'd share it as to like at least five things we could steal from it. There's plenty more, but these are just very general. I'm not giving, this is non-spoiler territory here, but a well acted, excellent show, excellent beginning. Um, yes, of course, every episode ends with something dramatic happening, but basically, this first episode of the second season gets us right back into the action and lays the groundwork over where all of the machinations are happening. Uh, so, for me, number three is let rumors spread, and let those rumors be wrong too. Players get really frustrated when when strangers have opinions about their behavior, especially when they're wrong. But you can also, this doesn't necessarily need to be negative, right? This can be extremely positive, even if they're wrong. Building the players into legends, having NPCs want to schmooze up to the side of player characters, letting the player characters be surrounded by paparazzi and sycophants and things of that nature, nobles and merchants and common folk and all those kind of people um, having opinions about it. There is a sweet spot for me when it comes to the X-Men comic books and characters. The X-Men almost exist in their own little bottle world, and it really shines when it talks about the mutant, um, how mutants and the mutant powers, basically young people born with powers that come about through adolescence and puberty, and they are gifted with these great abilities, and how society reacts to them. And the X-Men has been really embraced by the fans of the people who embrace the X-Men as fans. Love that kind of storytelling, like who's good, who's bad, how do people react. There are like cults and political issues and things like that that circle around the X-Men, and the player characters themselves can be like a gravity well of all that kind of stuff. Yeah, Hussein says, "Do you think House of the Dragon will ever be able to reach the Game of Thrones level of popularity?" Difficult, because you can never capture lightning in a bottle twice. It is nearly impossible to do so. I don't think it needs to. We live in a world where everything has to be compared to something else. I'm picking with you there here, Hussein, in the sense of like a lot of times we go, well, this is a great story, but will it be as good as, and that kind of thing. And I pick with you because I know what you're asking. I don't believe House of the Dragon will ultimately be just as popular, because you know D&D kind of ruined it with the seventh and eighth season of Game of Thrones. Some people just are just like, I can't handle it anymore. Also, it's these the shows have a particular flavor. There's some pretty damning and decadent things in there. I mean, listen, we're people who are watching a show where we're just like, oh yeah, incense, no big deal. Incense, it's just like, oh, family members sleeping with each other. That itself turns people away, and that repeated over and over again. Some people have a low tolerance for that kind of thing. It's like, yeah, I saw one season of this, I'm done. So yeah, I think it'll have a cult following, and if the quality level keeps up, I think we're going to get more and more people back onto the bandwagon that have left. It's very difficult for us to detach ourselves from a negative feeling into a positive one, even though logically speaking, one has nothing to do with the other. The showrunners, the creators, the actors, none of those people are part of Game of Thrones from season 8, or very few of them. Let's say very few of them. We have new people starting a new show with a new background. And listen, despite the fact of our opinions as consumers, uh, there are plenty of human beings that actually learn from their mistakes. And I feel like House of the Dragon is doing that. So yeah, absolutely. Okay, you actually bring up something um, that I think we're going to do this. Number four, I think number four, a best practice when it comes to House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones. Um, what is very interesting, well, interesting and parallel yet different storytelling here is, in Game of Thrones, we had ourselves different houses competing for the throne, and each house had kind of its own flavor. So the Baratheons had a different flavor than the Targaryens, which we were very very small group, right? And then they had a different flavor than the ones that lived in the Riverlands, and then the Starks were different than the Lannisters and such, and they had their different flavors. And when I say different flavors, different look, physical look, like genetically, biologically. They also had different looks fashion wise. Their demeanor, their goals. They even tell us each house has like a banner and a saying, like the Lannisters always repay our debts, and they the North never forgets, right? And that mantra was a way for us as a consumer, and George R. R. Martin writing, to always return to the center, to go, okay, these characters are getting a little bit out of hand, but what is their purpose? Oh, they always repay their debts. Well, what does that even mean? You know, does it mean, hey, you're getting a knife in the throat, like you put a knife to the throat of my cousin or something? Well, that might repay a debt, but repaying a debt may also mean just being very rich, and when repaying debts may be very difficult for houses that are always indebted to somebody else, or what have you. And but what's happening in House of the Dragon, and I've heard this slight complaint before, but in House of the Dragon, it's not about other disparate houses. It's the civil war happening with underneath the umbrella of technically a single house. So the public doesn't really get to see the small folk, the commoners don't get to see, because all they know is, oh, it's the royal family. I think they're squabbling, but we don't really know what's going on. And what's happening, this is a civil war amongst family members rather than a number of disparate houses. And the commonality amongst all of them is that from the outside we see them as a unified front, but internally, oh, they're working against each other. Some of them have the same goal, but they have different attitudes about how to achieve that goal. And I really like that. I mean, yes, that goes back to NPCs having a life that makes them the illusion that it seems like they have a life outside the player characters. I would say that the a fourth thing to steal from House of the Dragon, in Game of Thrones is to apply a a unified paintbrush and apply that unified paintbrush so that we as world builders, because many of us suffer from world builders disease, and as we suffer from our affliction, to use a very simplified paintbrush to always bring ourselves back to the center. And when I say back to the center, what I mean is, what is our goal, right? So an example would be, I have a fantasy world, and there's a clan of vampires that want to control all of the goodly realms, and they have spies and influencers and backstabbers and assassins, but they're ruled by a vampire clan, undead immortals. And the player characters don't know this, or they have suspicions of it, maybe people talk in the shadows. And when I am confused as to a goal, or the player characters try to talk to one of my NPCs, one of my bad, evil guys or something, what do they want? The simple paintbrush may be to control, to remain hidden and pull the strings of living society as an undead immortal. And so I now know whatever the player characters do or say, or what their behavior is, or when they disrupt all the machinations of the bad guys, we have to come back to a thing. So what if the players um, are disrupting trade routes, but the players are like, hey, all we want is to be immortal like you guys. If you offer us immortality, we'll leave you alone. Hmm. Would the vampire lords take, the player characters are very powerful. They can disrupt us. Do we want to make them immortal? I don't know. That's dangerous. But at the same time, if they're immortal and they promise to leave us alone, and we can take them on their word. Everything they've done to this point has been truthful. So should we make this deal? And that's a great conflict for your bad guys to have, but you already know what they want. And if you paint them with a paintbrush of very simple marking, hey, they are immortals and they want to control from the shadows. So things like that. There's thank you for bringing this up. There in House of the Dragon, I'm trying not to give away spoilers because this is actually in the books. So there are these assassins called, simply known as Blood and Cheese, which is a really, really great and descriptive names. Blood being the brutal one for the most part, and Cheese being like a rat. Now, I will say this, just because I've heard some people make a little bit of a complaint about something that happened in this first episode of season 2. And I will say this, I think we are not counting the fact that nobility does not see common folk. They don't see the lower people, right? The bottom dwellers. In real life, like me, as I'm a letter carrier and I deliver to a very affluent neighborhood here in the Ohio Valley in Central Ohio, known as Bexley. And most of these people live in multi-million dollar houses. And I don't get to see the residents that often. Actually, I see more workers and servants and housekeepers and people like that. And honestly, many people don't see them. So Blood and Cheese, they aren't ninjas. It's just the fact that the nobility don't see these people. Cheese is a rat catcher, so he's walking around the noble house and stuff like that because their point is to catch rats. So while I understand some people were like, no one saw them, I'm like, no, people saw them, like we see furniture, right? Like there are some people who are so rich and powerful they don't see other people around them doing the work that they were hired to do. So that's my description. Because one complaint was, well, didn't anybody stop them? And I'm like, no, they were they were supposed to be catching rats. I'm not going to tell you what they did, but I know in the books people like to to describe books versus televised um, versions of it, and the books are always better than movies and television because when we read a book, we create situations and things in our minds, and a novel can always put more words to describe a thing. When you're televising something, you're limited by both visuals and words, and you have a constraint. So if we were to tell novelists that you can only write a novel that's 450 pages, they would have that constraint. Most novelists don't have that constraint. So yeah, the books go into a lot more detail, but because they can. Yeah. Oh, Fayez. I'm butchering your name there, man. I meant, did you like the scene or not? I mean, in the books, it's different. Please keep the answer short. Oh, okay, okay. So I liked the scene. I liked it. Um, I think sometimes we, as consumers, think that there should be more to a thing than there is. I like the way they did it. I think it was actually for such a nasty scene. Um, uh, Gladly they cut away, and you just heard the sound effects, which is pretty horrible because our imaginations do a lot more for creating the horror in our minds than the actual seeing what's happening. But yes, I liked the scene, and I think seeing a thing is probably more mundane than we give things credit for. Even the screwing up the mission to me made perfect sense. It made perfect sense. You know, what's the game? Telephone? The game Telephone, where you get a bunch of people, you line up a bunch of people, you say one word or a phrase in the ear of the first person, and then each person has to speak into the next person's ear. And we all know that by the time you get through 7 people, 10 people, 15 people, that word or phrase has already mutated and changed. It's the same thing here. And I think it makes perfect sense. You hire a bunch of listen, if you're gonna hire sociopaths, you're this is the result that you get. In a world like that, right? There's only so much trust you can have when you're like, hey, do you mind going and murder killing someone? And the person's like, sure. Yeah. Yeah. Um, so yes, there, Hussein. And by the way, this is a channel where we talk honestly, openly, and this is very long form. Normally, I start at 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on my end, and we go for an hour every day, Monday through Friday. So I'm getting up there in age, so I started about 15 minutes late today. But for the most part, yeah, we're here to talk long form. So unfortunately, this isn't. I guess it could be broken up, but whatever. Where do I live, and where do people watch the show from your area? I live in Ohio, in the United States, the Ohio Valley, and I go live. Well, it is now, looking at the clock, 6:50 a.m. in the morning on my end of the world. So not sure where you are consuming this from, but that's what time it is here. And for the most part, it's very funny because I would say more than half the people that take part in the show are across the pond from me, but the hardcore individuals that are here in the States that take part, I got to give them, yeah, like Drew says, Drew says she watches from Germany. So yeah, absolutely. This is this is hella early over here. And it's kind of cool. Okay, number 5 before we get out of here. Uh, I think my fifth thing I would steal from House of the Dragon, and I guess larger part for Game of Thrones, is um, okay. I sometimes I think we don't really give credit to some of the simple things that happen in our fantasy and modern and sci-fi worlds. And what I mean by simple things are fashion, dress, behaviors, greetings, salutations and greetings, food. um, um, accoutrements, things that we drape to give our world's flavor. Now, of course, we don't have the ability to hire set designers and um, fashion designers like my wife loves the Bridgerton television show, and I watch it with her, and I am just my jaw is on the floor every time I watched the Bridgerton show because it is so lush. There are so many colors and flowers and the fashion and the it is it's just amazing. And when I see House of the Dragon, it brings me back. Uh, yeah, yeah. Song of Ice and Fire certainly loves food, and not only the food that they eat, but the way they eat it and consume. For example, like, hey, talk about Hussein's talking about the blood and cheese, rat catchers. I mean, how many times in our fantasy worlds have we had fantasy castles and things, and do we have commoners running around with setting traps to catch rats? And we literally breed dogs. Human society has bred dogs for different purposes. Some dogs were literally designed to go after rats. And oh, I see. Those aren't structured, but I see what you're saying. So these are what are we colloquially call standees, talking about accoutrements and all that kind of stuff. This is my wife and I. This is our entertainment room. So let me start one direction. All right, so behind me are nothing but standees. These are movie standees that you would find, you know, I don't know, what are they, 4 to 7 feet tall, depending on if you can really see the one right behind Angel's head. Right behind him is Aquaman, Jason Momoa, and then this is Angel from the X-Men. This is uh, Donald Glover's version of Lando Calrissian. And then if I move my head, there's Black Panther way in the background behind my fan. And then we have Prince Namor here, poking him in the crotch right here. Prince Namor. And then we have ourselves the MCU's version of Falcon. And then this is Infus Nest from the same movie that Lando Calrissian was from, Solo, a Star Wars story. Yeah. So anyway, that's what it is, and it actually blocks off. There's a television behind me, and the sun comes up. So if you've been watching the show, you'll notice that the sun was down and it comes up, and then there's a bunch of movie stuff like Wizard of Oz is up on the wall. James Dean is back there, and there's a bunch of other things. So yeah, giant rats, bread for milk and meat. That's nasty, but true. Yeah, there's something. Nah, no, no, no. Born on the East Coast. I'm a Philly kid, born and raised, but where I on the playground where I spent most of my days. No, no, no. That's actually not true. But Ohio Valley, Ohio. Yeah, there's something about going back to the iceberg analogy I was making. When we world build, we love ourselves some big overriding structures, right? Like I talked about vampire lords controlling people like puppets in the background, or different noble houses in mobility sending assassins after each other. But there's also the small part. So on one end we have our big storylines, our overriding themes of there's the monster lands that are controlled with the goblinoids and the dragons, and then we have the goodly lands with the knights and nobility, or all that kind of bullshit, right? But what about the small things? And sometimes the small things are, we can come up with very popular foods or treats. We can come up with different types of fashion that apply to different regions or holidays or festivals or purposes. I mean, maybe there was an ancient blue dragon long gone, but now people, out of respect and fear and honor and tradition wear blue scarves around their neck. Maybe they wear it as a headdress. Maybe they wear it around their neck with a clasp. Maybe they wear a blue cloak, or they put like a blue makeup on their cheeks and forehead, or what have you. And the players may not and listen, people don't walk around explaining themselves, how they're dressed or how they act or the foods they eat. But if you throw that in the game in media res, in the middle of people waking up in the morning, and you see the young school children taking their blue hoods and putting them on, and then the mom looks over at the player characters and she's got these two twin blue streaks on her cheeks. They don't, the NPCs don't explain themselves. They just go about their business. They may actually not understand why the player characters are not wearing blue, and maybe they come into the city state and they're offered this blue tag or piece of clothing or ribbon that someone comes up to. Maybe an old lady just comes up to and puts a pin through their outfit, puts the blue ribbon on them, pats them on the shoulder, and walks away. And the PCs are like, what the hell is this about? And now, could it have a larger, wider meaning? Not necessarily. Or could there really be a blue dragon that will murder kill anyone that doesn't honor the blue dragon's blueness without wearing blue? You know, Drew's like, yeah, of course there are also the sewer pigs in Slay Industries. Yep, they come pre-seasons with lots of drugs. Yeah, sewer pigs. You know, and listen, humans, we adapt strangely efficiently to bad situations, where we live, the conditions we live under. Once we get a new generation living under those conditions, we just adapt. And in fantasy world building, the same thing should apply. It's like, um, I don't have one. Yeah, those things may not apply. I'll answer your question in just a minute there, Hussein. Um, uh, a lot of times when it comes to adaptation about where people live and feel, and especially when it comes to world building, is that from an outsider, we may look at it and go, why the hell do you even live there? Like, why are you doing it? And like you're saying, Drew, the fact the place is overrun with giant rats, to the people that live there, that might not be a bad thing, especially if they taste pretty good. Well, or to their palate, they have rats cooking on spits. Maybe they train the rats. Maybe they dye them different colors and wrap them in different things. So they have races, or they train them to retrieve stolen goods and steal things for them and all that kind of stuff. Maybe they're big enough for small children to ride on their back, or halflings or something like that. Whatever. I don't have favorite shows ever. I am a person of a certain age whose memory and tastes fluctuate so much. I do have some top rated things in recent history, like Shogun, House of the Dragon, and The Boys. The Boys season 4 has just started. I'm a huge fan of that. But in the past, wow, there's some stuff. That's a hard one for me, because it can change day by day. You know what I mean? There's always something where you go, oh, this is my favorite thing, and then someone else taps you on the shoulder. Uh, Thematically, you get a tap on the shoulder, and your brain goes, oh, why didn't I say this other thing? Right? I'm a huge lover of the X-Men, and I love so many iterations. Not all of it, but I grew up with the X-Men, buying the comics on spinner racks at 7-Eleven, and things like that. I remember my first X-Men comic that I ever purchased was Storm changing into a xenomorph known as the Brood on the front cover, and it just blew my mind, and I was like, what? It's crazy. The surface dweller tradition in Vault 4 of Fallout was a great example of getting to witness social dynamics without understanding them. Yes. Oh, from the televised version of it, exactly. Because our main characters, our players arrive. What was it? The one was the Cyclops and the mutations and stuff. And even me watching the show, I was just like, wait, what? Like, what the hell's what? I don't understand this. And we were introduced to it. And I think this is weird to say, but by not explaining why people are doing a thing or why they're involved in a thing, actually makes player characters want to ask more questions. So if you create, the players will want to get answers to questions you didn't even state. So when people are acting, when they look or act or behave or engage in things that are very strange, and you never explain why they're doing it, especially if the players get in trouble for not doing a thing. Let me give you a perfect example, a real world example of a thing. Um, if I were to travel over to various locations in the Middle East, there would be a call to action in a language I wouldn't understand. And people would stop and possibly bow down or roll out a carpet or something like that that I'm unfamiliar with and begin prostrating themselves and praying. And I may not understand that, but that is a real world thing that could happen to someone in our world, to go somewhere and see something happen when there's a big speaker or bells ring or things like that. Even here, where I'm around, Catholic churches, bells ring at the top of the hour, the halfway mark and the top of the hour. So 1:30, 2:30, 3:30, and things like that. So yeah. Who says it? It should be Game of Thrones, duh. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yep, yep, yep. I love it. What do I do for a living? I'm a letter carrier. I carry mail. As a matter of fact, I'm about to go to work. It is 7 a.m. in the morning. I live very close to my job. I have to be there by 8 in the morning. I'm about a 10-minute drive away. So yeah, so very much when I get off of these episodes, airing these shows, I literally just grab my lunch, throw it in a bag, I get in my car, and I drive to work, and I do my thing for a living. So, and I carved out this time early in the morning because it don't tell anybody, but you guys benefit me more than I benefit you because this is kind of like my gaming time, and so that's why I do it. So I wake up at like 5 to 5:30 in the morning, and do try to do some writing and make a thumbnail and maybe have one of my shows that I missed in the background and try to do that kind of stuff first thing in the morning. Because in the evening, my time is for my family, my wife. Swim because I got a swimming pool, super hot for the next week or so, things like that. So, guys, thank you very much for being part of the show. Thank you, Hussein, and anyone else who's come back Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So whatever, so it's 6 a.m. EST my time or EDT. I can't remember which one it is. So whatever time it is, your time, that's what time I go live. And we talk about tabletop role playing games here. Now, mind you, we do. Okay, maybe that's a lie. we talk. I talk too much about movies and television because if I wasn't doing tabletop role playing games, I'd probably be talking about that. But I love being influenced by things that create mind fuel. And so, really, what the channel is about is stealing an idea that if you are a creator, you're someone who is stuck for ideas, you're someone who just likes to think about science or technology or fantasy during your day, and you just want something to do. That's it. So have a great one. I'll see. Hopefully, you'll be back. Yeah, it is a symbiotic relationship. I'm sure we can get plenty out of it. Certainly. Well, thank you there, Drew, and hopefully I will be back on Heath's Geekverse show. I can't wait. If they ever do Sicario, I want to do the show, do the movie Sicario because it made me think about Sicario and the heroine's labyrinth and the hero's journey, and I want to do that movie so bad over on Geek's show. Retro Nerd Girl just did a live stream for her 8th year in the biz and 200 episodes. I think I'm getting close to like 2,000 uh, things, but mine is unscripted and all that kind of business. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for being part of the show. Thanks, Drew, for using me. I really appreciate that, to be honest with you. I hope yourself and others can get something out of it, and just to be inspired. I just like to I like being inspired by things. It amazes me that the human condition allows us to be our we have developed as a species that allow ourselves to create worlds upon worlds upon worlds in our heads. And I love the fact that we have imagination, and I think it's something that should be cultivated in others. And so I'm very impressed by the human fact that we can even do such a thing. He's like, do another hour. The DBJ is the name of the drug that I enjoy. I hope I can fit up your nose. I really appreciate that. Uh, I, I I just picture my feet dangling as you're just like snorting me up. It's like help, gook, gook, gook. Yank. Oh wait a minute, no. You'd have to chop me up with a razor blade first. Ooh. Okay, okay. That's fine. That's if that's I mean, if that's how you if that's how you want to snort me. She was like, so yes, I am a user. Chop, 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 chop. Yeah, straight to the brain. Hells yeah. Have a great one, Drew. We have to meet sometime. Yeah, I have to stay up to 2 a.m. every night doing work for the Germans. Now I never get up before 9 in the morning. Oh no, that's right. That's right. You're on the wrong side of the world, aren't you? Oh, sorry there, dude. Yeah, yeah. Straight to the brain. Straight to the membrane. Sorry, I'm just thinking of Cypress Hill. Straight to the membrane. You guys get out of here. Go about your business. You guys have a great one. I'll see you later. No call to action, nothing like that. You guys have a great one. I'll see you later. Peace and tranquility. Bye.